40 guys, same calorie deficit, same training program, same supplements. The only thing that changed, how much protein they ate. The high protein group, 2.4 grams per kilo per day. They gained 1.2 kilos of lean mass and lost 4.8 kilos of fat. The low protein group, 1.2 grams per kilo, barely moved. 0.1 kilos of lean mass, 3.5 kilos of fat. 30 days. Here's what makes this tricky. Body composition changes in a month are small. Water weight, glycogen, a salty meal the night before your scan, all of that can completely hide what's actually happening to your muscle and fat. So if you're gonna test this yourself, you need to control for the noise. Otherwise, you're just guessing. By the end of this video, you'll have the exact per meal protein targets, the measurement checklist so you're not lying to yourself, and a meal by meal plan you can copy paste today. Let's start with what we're actually comparing. Low protein is 0.8 grams per kilo per day. That's the RDA, the government recommendation for a sedentary person who's not trying to change their body composition. High protein is 1.6 to 2.4 grams per kilo per day. That's the range where the research shows muscle preservation and fat loss actually happen when you're training hard and eating in a deficit. If you're very lean, like sub 10% body fat, and you're in an aggressive cut, you can push that upper range to 2.3 to 3.1 grams per kilo of fat-free mass. But for most people in a deficit, 1.6 to 2.4 is the sweet spot. Here's how that breaks down per meal. 0.3 to 0.4 grams per kilo 4 times a day. So if you weigh 80 kilos, that's 24 to 32 grams of protein per meal. Why that range? Because that's the dose that maxes out muscle protein synthesis. It hits about 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine, which is the amino acid that actually flips the switch on muscle building. Go lower than that per meal, and you're leaving gains on the table. Go way higher in one sitting, you're not getting much extra benefit. You're just making expensive urine. Now, everything else stays locked. Same total calories, we're using a 500 to 750 calorie deficit per day. Same training volume, same sleep target, same step count. The only variable that changes is protein. That's how you isolate the effect. Otherwise, you're comparing 2 different diets and 2 different training programs, and you have no idea what actually worked. All right, let's look at what the trials actually measured when they ran this exact test. Let's start with the big one. Longland and colleagues, 2016, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. 40 trained men, 4 weeks. 40% calorie deficit, that is aggressive, about 1 to 2 pounds per week for most people. They're doing resistance training and high intensity intervals 6 days a week. The high protein group ate 2.4 grams per kilo. They gained 1.1 kilos more lean mass than the low protein group, and they lost an extra 1.3 kilos of fat in a month. Same calories, same brutal training program. The only difference was protein. Now, 1.1 kilos of lean mass in 4 weeks, that's not just muscle tissue. Remember, lean mass includes water, glycogen stores, and connective tissue. But the direction is clear. Higher protein protected what they had and added a little bit, while lower protein barely moved the needle. Pasiakos, 2013. Same year, different lab. 31 days, 40% deficit again, but this time with military recruits in basic training. Higher protein, 1.6 to 2.4 grams per kilo, spared significantly more fat-free mass compared to the RDA group at 0.8 grams per kilo. Same finding, different population. The pattern holds. Now, Bray and colleagues in 2012 did something different. They overfed people. Added 1,000 calories a day for 8 weeks in a metabolic ward so they couldn't cheat. Everyone gained weight, but the high protein group shifted more of that gain toward lean mass. The low protein group, more of it went to fat. So it's not just about cutting. Protein matters when you're in a surplus too. It determines what kind of weight you gain. And just to tie it all together, Lady and colleagues did a meta-analysis in 2015, looked at a bunch of controlled diet studies. On average, higher protein during weight loss gave people about 0.8 kilos more fat loss and 0.4 kilos better lean mass retention compared to lower protein. So here's the reality check. These are real effects, but they're not massive in 30 days. You're not gonna gain 5 kilos of muscle in a month. But 0.4 to 1 kilo of extra lean mass and another kilo of fat loss, that's the difference between spinning your wheels and actually recomping. And that gap gets bigger the longer you run the protocol. So why does protein do this? Let's break down the 3 mechanisms. Mechanism 1, muscle protein synthesis and anti-catabolism. When you eat protein, you're delivering amino acids, especially leucine, that directly trigger muscle protein synthesis. Think of it like flipping a switch that tells your body, hey, we're building here. Don't tear this down for energy. In a calorie deficit, your body is looking for fuel. If you're not giving it enough protein, it's gonna break down muscle tissue to get amino acids. Higher protein acts like armor. It protects what you've built, and if your training stimulus is strong enough, it can even add a little lean mass while you're losing fat. That's what we saw in the Longland study. Mechanism 2, satiety. Protein keeps you fuller longer. When you eat a high protein meal, it increases hormone like GLP-1 and PYY. Those are your fullness hormones. At the same time, it suppresses ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone. Studies show that when people eat higher protein without being told to restrict calories, they spontaneously eat less, like 200 to 300 fewer calories per day. You're not white knuckling through hunger, you're just less hungry. That makes the deficit way easier to stick to, which is half the battle. Mechanism 3, the thermic effect of food, or TEF. Your body has to burn calories just to digest and process food. Protein is the most expensive macronutrient for your body to process. About 20 to 30% of the calories you eat from protein get burned off just digesting it. Compare that to carbs at 5 to 10% and fat at basically 0 to 3%. Now this isn't a massive effect. If you're eating 150 grams of protein a day, that's maybe an extra 30 to 50 calories burned compared to eating the same calories from carbs or fat. But it's free. It compounds. And when you're trying to lose fat over weeks or months, every little edge matters. So those are your 3 mechanisms. Protein protects muscle, kills hunger, and gives you a small metabolic boost. All 3 work together to make fat loss easier and lean mass retention better. All right, so you're convinced. But now comes the tricky part. Measurement. If you can't track it accurately, you're just guessing. Best option, a DEXA scan. It's the gold standard for body composition. Scan every 4 to 6 weeks. That's enough time to see real trends without getting lost in daily noise. If you're using a 3D optical scanner like Styku or similar, it's pretty good too. The research shows decent agreement with DEXA for tracking trends. But here's the catch. Smaller changes, like the half kilo to 1 kilo difference we're talking about in 30 days, can sit right at that noise level. If you're using a BIA scale at home or InBody at your gym, just track weekly trends and pair it with waist and hip measurements. The absolute numbers might be off, but the direction will be right. Bottom line, pair whatever tool you're using with your scale trend and measurements. Triangulate. Don't rely on one data point. Here's your scan day checklist. This is how you control for the noise. Same time of day, ideally first thing in the morning. Fasted state, no food or water for 2 to 3 hours before. Track your sodium intake for 3 days leading up to the scan. A salty weekend can add a kilo of water that looks like fat or lean mass gain. If you're taking creatine, note it. Creatine pulls 1 to 2 kilos of water into your muscles, which shows up as lean mass. That's fine, just keep it consistent across scans. Bathroom before the scan, and for women, try to scan at the same phase of your menstrual cycle, because hormonal water shifts can swing your numbers by a kilo or more. Reality check. In 30 days, if everything goes right, your training is solid, your protein is dialed, your sleep doesn't crater, you're looking at maybe half a kilo to 1 kilo of detectable lean mass difference, and another kilo of fat loss compared to lower protein. That's not huge, but the trend over time is what matters. And if you control for all this noise, you'll actually see it. Okay, safety check. The big question, isn't high protein bad for your kidneys? Short answer, no. Not if you're healthy. Multiple studies on trained adults, including research from Antonio and colleagues, eating 2.6 to 3.3 grams per kilo per day, that's above what we're recommending, for up to a year showed no adverse effects on kidney or liver function. The markers stayed totally normal. Now, if you have chronic kidney disease or pre-existing kidney issues, high protein can be a problem. In that case, you need to talk to your doctor before cranking protein up. But for healthy people who train, this is safe. Second question, do I need to spread my protein out perfectly across 4 meals, or can I just eat it all at once? Total daily protein matters most. If you hit your target, 1.6 to 2.4 grams per kilo, you're gonna see results. But spreading it out, hitting that 0.3 to 0.4 grams per kilo per meal does optimize muscle protein synthesis. You're giving your body multiple signals throughout the day to build instead of one giant spike and then nothing. So perfect distribution helps, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Hit your total, train hard, and you'll be 90% of the way there. All right, let's bring it home. Same training, same calories, only protein changes. In 30 days, you're looking at an extra half kilo to 1 kilo of lean mass preserved or gained, and another kilo of fat loss compared to low protein. Your target, 1.6 to 2.4 grams per kilo per day. Hit 0.3 to 0.4 grams per kilo per meal, 4 times a day. Measure with DEXA if you can, 3D scan or scale plus measurements if you can't. Control for sodium, creatine, hydration, and timing. The studies are clear, the mechanism is sound, now you just have to run it. If this kind of systematic science-backed content is what you're looking for, protocols you can actually test, not just hype, hit subscribe. I break down training, body composition, and performance science every week with the same level of detail you just saw here. Comment below with your protein target in grams per kilo and your biggest question about running this protocol. I want to see where you're starting from and what's holding you back, and I'll answer as many as I can. Let's see what 30 days of dialed in protein actually does. Run the test, track it right, and I'll see you in the next one.